A detailed summary and reflection on Aswamedhika Parva, the book of the horse sacrifice, the time of cleansing after the war, the wanderings of a sacred horse, the revival of a dead child, the battles of a father and son, and the lesson that true merit comes from the heart, not from. Aswamedhika Parva is the 14th major book of the Mahabharat. It has 96 sections and 3,320 verses. This book covers the time after the war, when Yudhishthira seeks to cleanse the sins of the battle through the Ashwamedha yajna, the great horse sacrifice. It shows Krishna's journey back to Dwaraka, the birth and miraculous revival of Parikshit, the wanderings of the sacrificial horse protected by Arjuna across a year and many kingdoms, the battles with various kings who challenged the horse, Arjuna's death and revival during his encounter with his own son Babhruvahana, the completion of the yajna, and finally the story of the mongoose that turns everything the sacrifice thought it had achieved on its head. Aswamedhika Parva is full of journeys, revivals, and lessons that arrive from unexpected directions. It shows how a king burdened by guilt finds a way to keep going, and what it actually means to clean a soul that has seen what Yudhishthira has seen. The story starts in the quiet days after the war. Yudhishthira rules Hastinapura, but his heart is still heavy in a way that the coronation and Bhishma's teachings have only partially lifted. He feels the blood of his family on his hands every morning when he wakes. The events of this parva are like a long process of clearing, not sudden or dramatic but gradual, moving through action and journey and surprise. Aswamedhika Parva teaches about atonement and what it actually requires. Not just gold and ceremony. Not just the grand gesture. Something more honest than that, which the mongoose at the end of the book will make very clear. Yudhishthira sits on the throne of Hastinapura and rules, but ruling and being at peace are two completely different things, and he knows it. He thinks of the dead every day. He sees their faces. He counts them. The cousins, the teachers, the uncles, the friends, the men who came to fight for him and did not go home. He feels the weight of the war as a personal sin that no victory can cancel out, that no throne can justify. He killed his own family. He killed his eldest brother without knowing it was his brother. He bent the rules of dharma to win. All of this sits in him and will not move. He goes to Vyas and asks how to clean this. He does not ask whether it can be cleaned. He asks how. That question is itself a kind of faith. Vyas tells him to perform the Ashwamedha yajna, the horse sacrifice that is one of the most powerful rituals in the tradition, capable of washing away even the heaviest sin if performed with genuine devotion and the right intention. Yudhishthira agrees immediately. Then he looks at the treasury and finds it empty. The war took everything. This is the real problem of peace after a real war. The winning side has no money left either. Yudhishthira, who cares more for dharma than for power, feels this practical obstacle as keenly as the spiritual one. Both have to be solved before anything can move forward. Krishna sees what is happening in Yudhishthira and speaks to it directly. He says the Ashwamedha yajna is the right path. Not just because it is spiritually powerful, though it is, but because it will do several things at once. It will give Yudhishthira's guilt somewhere to go, somewhere real and demanding and costly. It will demonstrate Pandav's sovereignty to the kingdoms that have watched the war from a distance and are not sure yet what kind of king Yudhishthira will be. And it will give the people of Hastinapura something to gather around that is about life rather than death, about renewal rather than loss. Krishna's advice in this parva carries his characteristic quality of seeing more angels than anyone else in the room. He is not simply telling Yudhishthira to do a ritual. He is telling him that this particular ritual, at this particular moment, is the right action for the right reasons. There is a difference between performing a sacrifice to impress the world and performing one because the soul genuinely needs it. Krishna knows which one this is, and he knows Yudhishthira knows it too. The problem of paying for it is not a small one. The Ashwamedha yajna is not a modest ceremony. It requires gold, Brahmans, food, animals, priests, space, time, and the resources to receive and feed the kings and scholars who will come from across the known world to attend. The war consumed 18 days of fighting and decades of preparation. The treasury that was already strained by the years of exile and the costs of building the army is now empty in the most straightforward possible sense. There is no gold. Yudhishthira asks his brothers and Krishna what can be done. This moment in the book is quietly important. It shows that even the highest spiritual intentions have to deal with the material world. Devotion does not exempt you from logistics. The gods help those who help themselves, which in this case means finding the gold first. Krishna has knowledge that runs very deep and very far back. He remembers an old king named Maruta, a ruler of great wealth and greater piety who performed a yajna of his own long ago and left behind a vast treasure of gold in the Himalayas, gold that was never claimed, never used, sitting in the mountains waiting. He tells Yudhishthira where to find it. The Pandavas send an expedition. The gold is there exactly where Krishna said it would be. It is enough to fund the entire yajna with real abundance. This is one of the moments in the Mahabharata where Krishna's help arrives not through miracle or divine intervention but through knowledge, through the simple fact of knowing something that nobody else in the room knows. That kind of help is real and practical, and the book gives it its proper weight. Before the yajna begins, something happens that shifts the emotional ground of the whole parva. Uttara, Abhimanyu's young widow, gives birth. The family gathers with hope because this child is the last of the Abhimanyu line, the continuation of everything Abhimanyu was and everything his death took away. But the baby is born dead. The Brahmashira weapon that Ashwatthama directed at the Pandav wombs on that terrible night reached this child and killed it before it could draw breath. The Kuru line, already thin from the war, is looking at extinction. Krishna acts without hesitation. He uses his divine power in a way the book describes with genuine wonder, reaching into that darkness and pulling the child back toward life. Parikshit cries. The sound fills the room and then spreads through the palace and then through the city. The Pandavas who have been holding their breath release it. There is going to be a future. There is going to be someone to carry it forward. The revival of Parikshit is not just a miracle of one child. It is the revival of the possibility of continuity, the knowledge that what they fought for and what they lost it for was not the end of everything. It was a crossing to something that will still exist when they are gone. The yajna begins with the release of the sacred horse. A horse chosen for an Ashwamedha must be perfect, without blemish, strong and free. It is consecrated and then released to wander wherever it will for a year. Whatever land it crosses becomes part of Yudhishthira's domain by ritual claim. Any king who stops the horse or captures it is declaring war on Hastinapura. Arjuna follows the horse with an army behind him to protect it and to meet whatever challenge arises. It is a year of wandering across the subcontinent with a sacred animal leading the way and Arjuna following, which is its own kind of strange and demanding journey after everything he has already been through. The book describes the horse's path across many kingdoms and Arjuna's movement through unfamiliar lands with a quiet attention to the details of travel and encounter. Arjuna is tired. Anyone who reads this parva after reading everything that came before it understands that he has been the center of more of the story's violence than anyone except perhaps Bhima. He has carried more guilt and more grief and more divine instruction than any one man should have to carry. And here he is, walking behind a horse across the country for a year, fighting kings who challenge it, showing mercy where he can, moving forward because his brother needs this done, and that is enough reason. The horse is challenged many times. The Trigartas challenge it, the same warriors who sent the Samsaptakas against Arjuna in the war. He defeats them again. The Magadhs challenge it. He defeats them too, but carefully, without the kind of total destruction the war saw, because the yajna asks for the demonstration of power rather than its full use. He fights the Nishadas, the Chedis, other kingdoms whose names the book moves through one by one. In each encounter Arjuna is the same one he has always been, willing to fight when fighting is what the situation demands, willing to stop when it is not, exhausted underneath all of it but not showing it. What the book captures in these encounters is something about what sovereignty actually means in practice. It is not just winning a war once. It is the continuous demonstration of strength and justice across every kingdom that shares the world with you. Arjuna does this for a year, and the book gives that year its proper length and weight rather than summarizing it quickly. The horse wanders into Manipura. Arjuna was here before, years ago, during the years of exile, and he married Chitrangada, the princess of Manipura. Babhruvahana is the son of that marriage, raised in Manipura as his mother's heir, a young king who has grown up without his father present. When the horse arrives and Arjuna follows it into Manipura, Babhruvahana comes forward. He wants to receive his father with honor and gifts. But Ulupi, Arjuna's Naga wife who is also present, tells Babhruvahana that receiving the Ashwamedha horse with gifts instead of battle is unworthy of a Kshatriya. A king must challenge the horse. That is the proper dharma. Babhruvahana listens. He takes up his bow. The duel between father and son is fierce and real. Babhruvahana has been trained well and fights without holding back because his dharma demands it and because Ulupi told him it must be so. Arjuna fights him properly, not pulling his punches out of fatherly softness, because the yajna demands the horse be genuinely defended. The two of them stand across from each other on the field of Manipura and fight the way warriors fight when the situation asks it of them, which is completely and without quarter. Babhruvahana shoots an arrow that finds the gap in Arjuna's armor and kills him. Arjuna falls. His body lies on the ground of Manipura, and the horse stands nearby, and Babhruvahana stands over his father's body and feels the full horror of what his duty just required him to do. He cries. The grief of it is immediate and total. He won the duel. He did what his dharma and Ulupi's instruction said he must do. His father is dead on the ground in front of him, and Babhruvahana is the one who put him there. The book does not hurry past this moment. It sits in it. The duty was real. The grief is equally real. Both of those things are true at the same time, and the Mahabharata, which has been saying this across every parva, says it again here through the tears of a young king standing over his father's body on a field in Manipura. Ulupi, who instructed Babhruvahana to fight, and who watched the duel from nearby, steps forward now. She carries the Nagmani, a gem of the Naga kingdom with the power to restore life. She places it on Arjuna's chest. The gem works. Arjuna breathes. He opens his eyes. He looks up at his son, and at Ulupi, and at the horse still standing nearby, and puts together what has happened. He is not angry. He understands. He praises Babhruvahana's courage for fighting with full commitment. He understands that Ulupi arranged this deliberately, and he understands why, because there was a curse on Arjuna from the Vasus for his role in Bhishma's fall on the 10th day of the war, and Babhruvahana's killing of him in honest combat has dissolved that curse. The death and the revival together did what needed to be done. The Mahabharata has a way of making its deaths work on multiple levels simultaneously, and this is one. of those moments. After a full year the horse returns to Hastinapura and the yajna reaches its culmination. Kings from across the known world come to attend. The rites are performed over many days with the full devotion and precision that such a ceremony demands. Brahmins chant. Offerings are made. The fire receives what it is given. Yudhishthira performs his part with a sincerity that the book takes care to note. This is not a performance of piety. He means every moment of it. When it is done, something in him that has been held tight since the war loosens a little further. The guilt does not disappear. He is not built for guilt to simply disappear. But it finds its proper place inside him, no longer sitting on top of everything, no longer the first thing he feels every morning. The yajna has done what Vyas said it would do. Before Krishna leaves for Dwaraka, Arjuna comes to him and admits something that takes honesty to say. He has forgotten parts of what Krishna told him on the field before the war began. The Bhagavad Gita was spoken in a moment of extraordinary intensity, just before the greatest battle of his life, and Arjuna received it then with his whole being open. But time has passed, and the war has happened, and the details have blurred at the edges. He asks Krishna to repeat it. Krishna smiles and says he cannot repeat it exactly as it was because that moment is gone and cannot be recreated. But he gives Arjuna the Anugita, a retelling of the essential teachings in a form suited to this quieter time. The teachings on the soul, on dharma, on devotion, on the nature of action and its fruits. Given again, differently, for a different moment. This is Krishna's parting gift to Arjuna and through Arjuna. To everyone who will read this book long after both of them are gone. At the end of the yajna, when the celebrations are at their height and everyone present is feeling the satisfaction of something vast and generous completed, a mongoose appears. Half its body is golden, shining like the sun. The other half is ordinary brown fur. It moves through the yajna ground and then stops and speaks. It says this entire sacrifice, with all its gold and all its priests and all its kings in attendance, has not equaled the merit of a small act it witnessed long ago. It tells the story. During a great famine, a poor Brahman and his family were starving. They had one handful of flour left between them. A guest arrived, a stranger who was also starving. Without hesitation the Brahman gave his portion to the guest. His wife gave hers. His son gave his. His daughter-in-law gave hers. The whole family gave the only food they had to a stranger and went to sleep. Hungry. The mongoose had rolled in the flour that spilled from that meal. Half its body turned to gold from the touch of it. It has been traveling to every great sacrifice since, hoping the other half will turn gold too. It has not happened yet. This yajna, with all its wealth and ceremony, has not done it either. The yajna ground goes quiet. All the kings and priests and Brahmins, who were feeling pleased with themselves a moment ago, are now sitting with what the mongoose just said. The book does not editorialize. It does not need to. The mongoose says what it says and walks away, and the silence it leaves behind is the teaching. True merit is not measured in gold given from abundance. It is measured in what you give when giving costs you everything you have. That is the standard. The Ashwamedha yajna, grand and sincere as it was, did not reach it. A starving family's handful of flour did. Aswamedhika Parva teaches about atonement and what it actually requires. Yudhishthira performs the yajna sincerely and it helps him. The guilt loosens. The land begins to breathe again. Parikshit is alive and the Kuru line will continue. These are real things and they matter. But the mongoose at the end of the book is not there to cancel all of that. It is there to say something the whole epic has been saying in different ways since the beginning, the Deepest things are not measured by the grandest gestures. They are measured by what a person does when no one is watching and when doing the right thing costs them something real. The revival of Arjuna in Manipura teaches something adjacent to this. Duty led Babhruvahana to kill his father. Grace brought the father back. The two things together dissolved an old curse. That is the Mahabharat's way of saying that sometimes the painful thing and the right thing and the healing thing are not three separate events. They are one event moving through three phases. You just have to be willing to go through all three. Parikshit's revival at the beginning of the Parva and Arjuna's revival in the middle of it frame the whole book with the idea of life coming back from death. The war produced so much death. This Parva is about what comes after death when the right conditions are present. Grace, devotion, genuine love. Given at genuine cost. Those are the conditions. The book lays them out one by one, and the mongoose at the end names the deepest one. Aswamedhika Parva sits between Anusana Parva and Ashramvasika Parva. Anusana held the end of Bhishma and his final teachings. Ashramvasika will hold the retirement of the older generation, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari and Kunti going to the forest for their last years. Aswamedhika sits between those two endings and is itself a kind of new beginning, the first sustained action of the Pandav rule rather than its preparation. The Anugita that Krishna gives Arjuna before leaving for Dwaraka is a quiet farewell wrapped inside a teaching. Krishna will appear again in the story but not in the same way, not with the same dailiness of presence. He was Arjuna's charioteer for 18 days, and his friend and guide for the whole arc of the story, and now he is going home. The Anugita is what he leaves Arjuna with. Not a weapon. Not a promise of future help. A teaching. The same teaching he gave on the field before the war. Given again for the quieter life that comes after. The mongoose story is where the whole Parva, and in some ways the whole epic, comes to its most honest point. The Mahabharata has shown you kings, and wars, and divine weapons, and cosmic visions, and the deaths of the greatest warriors who ever lived. And then a half-golden mongoose walks through a sacrifice, and says none of it equals a starving family's last handful of flour given to a stranger. That is not a dismissal of everything that came before. It is a clarification of what any of it was actually for. All the dharma, all the duty, all the sacrifice, all the teaching, it was all pointing toward this, the moment when a person has almost nothing and gives it anyway because someone else needs it more. That is the standard the Mahabharata sets at the end of its 14th book, and it does not apologize for how high it is. This essay is part of the Deep Thoughts series on Mahabharat.at, exploring the Mahabharat's most difficult moral questions, its characters, their choices, and what those choices mean for us today. Read the full essay and discover more at https://mahabharat.at.